Hey, what's going on, U.S. history people? This is Mr. Norris,
And Mr. Lawrence.
and we are here to talk to you guys today about your Colonial America pack, and we're going to deal with a page entitled Peoples and Peopling of the Colony. So give you a little background on who these people were in the present-day American colony. So let's get started.
So the first question we want to think about in this unit is the one that you see on your screen, and it asks, what value did North American colonies have for Europe? So this is something hopefully that you'll start to remember from your Global 2 days, the idea of triangular trade and also things like natural resources that industrialized nations needed from these colonies. So let's think, what were some things that North America actually could provide for Europe? Mr. Norris, what do you think? Give me a guess.
Clearly, they're looking for something that can make them money. So perhaps it is some crops. Perhaps it's, I know in Canada there's a big fur trade going on. So anything that the European countries could use to make money. So perhaps we have lumber. Lumber would be used to build ships and other things as well. And you also, as I just mentioned, had fur, particularly beaver fur, used in Canada.
All right, now what about this one? There's a plant here. So agriculture was also part of this process of making a profit. Do you remember what do you know what this is?
I believe that is tobacco, if I remember correctly.
That is correct, tobacco. And we refer to that as a cash crop. So these were crops that were grown to make
money.
Very good.
We also have cotton, which develops a little bit later and will play a large role in the American economy prior to the Civil War. Tobacco and cotton, again, as you just mentioned, are cash crops. Sugar as well, especially down south and in the Caribbean area. Sugar plantations were able to make lots of money by selling sugar.
And one other issue that wasn't necessarily about making money or selling goods, but was the issue of what they refer to as living space. So this idea that Europe was becoming crowded, especially in places like Great Britain and London, and people needed places to live. So they saw North America and thought it'd be a great idea to start sending people in that direction. So living space was offered in North America. Now, this all equals to what for Europe? What are we trying to make?
So all these things together, I think, are a way for European countries to make money. And look how happy this guy is. He's got, what are those, 20s there?
He's making some money.
He's happy. He's quite happy with making money. He is Europe during this time, making money off of the colonies. All right, let's jump over to the time period 1400 to 1600 and read along with me, please. In North America, we begin to see the assimilation or the bringing together of three different types of societies. Native Americans, who were the original inhabitants, Europeans, as a result of Columbus and later exploration, and Africans, who unfortunately are brought over as slave labor. What we begin to see from these three regions is the formation of small economic trade alliances that will exchange goods and services among each other. So these three areas of the world really interact with each other and develop trade. And it is called the
triangular trade.
Why is it called that?
Because surprisingly, historians, sociologists, not very creative, as we're going to talk about. So you'll see here is a map of what this triangular trade looked like. It looks like a triangle. It has three sides. So here's a great map. And to many of us, this might look familiar from your Global 2 days. But you can see at the top, you see North America to the northwest. And it's pointing towards Europe in the northeast. And it's saying sugar, tobacco, and cotton were going to Europe. And from Europe down south to Africa, we saw textiles, rum, manufactured goods. And then from Africa, unfortunately, we'll talk more about the Middle Passage and the issue of humans being brought from Africa to the Americas to work as slaves in the North American plantations.
So again, this idea of the three different regions of the world, we're going to focus really quickly on what goods were actually shipped. Mr. Lawrence just talked about some, but we're going to write these down in your packet. So coming from the Americas to Europe, we have tobacco, molasses, which is basically sugar, cotton, and indigo, which was used in a dye in clothing. Going from Europe to the Americas, we have manufactured goods. So these resources were shipped to Europe, and they would turn them into finished products.
So going from Africa to the Americas and vice versa, we see human beings, again, being shipped across the Atlantic Ocean, referred to the Middle Passage, to North America to work as slaves. And then from North America to Africa, we see things, cash crops like tobacco and cotton. And then finally, once again, we see from Africa to Europe. At this time, slaves were also being brought to Europe. And as a result, you would also see from Europe to Africa those manufactured goods, things like weapons, things like clothing that were actually produced in textile mills, would be brought to Africa as well.
All right, so now we're going to focus back on the Americas and clash of views and values. If you look here, there are two different types of societies. On the left, we have Native Americans, and on the right-hand side, we have European societies. And we notice a great difference in not only the living environment, but the clothing as well. All right, so we're going to talk about who was clashing. Mr. Lawrence, tell us who was clashing.
All right, so there's two major groups that we have at this time period in North America. Obviously, we know Europeans weren't the first humans to the North American continent. There were millions of natives that lived here already. So these native tribes will come in contact with newly arriving European, and they will have clashes, unfortunately. And one of the big things they clash over is this idea of land, where natives value land differently than Europeans. Natives saw land as something that should be shared or something that could be used for the common goods. Humans should take what they need and really leave the rest for others to use, where Europeans had a little different idea. They didn't necessarily believe in this coexistence. They believed in more of an individual ownership. We saw also the idea of Christian missionaries coming to North America. If you remember back from your Global 2 days, we studied the idea of the enclosure movement, this idea of putting up fences and saying property is mine, you stay off my lawn, I'll stay off yours. That is a European perspective that was brought to the Americas at this time.
So Europe is like the old man screaming, "Get off my lawn" to everybody else, is what you're telling us?
That's right. That's where it originated.
Let's take a look at this map, and we see North America in the dark yellow area over here. This is the original 13 colonies. In the light yellow, Britain gains this area of land from France. The next video, we'll talk about the French and Indian War. In North America, there were predominantly 3 European countries: Spain, England, and France. So let's talk about warfare, some causes of warfare. As you mentioned earlier, a lot of it is over land. And we have tobacco, which is very profitable. It is a cash crop again. And what tobacco does to the land is it destroys the land. So people need to expand in order to grow more tobacco. And settlers are moving west to make more money. And the problem is that land that they're going on is where a lot of Native Americans live. And you also see missionaries spreading Christianity.
So some of the effects, one thing that we'll be talking about is something referred to as the French and Indian War. At least that's what we call it from the American perspective. And we'll see that natives will really be forced in some cases to choose a side between the British and the French. Many natives will choose the French, but as a result of a British victory, they will be devastated by this conflict. Some survivors will be sold into slavery, and we'll also see British colonial settlements beginning to expand and push natives further off their land.
All right, before we leave you today, we'd like you to turn in your packet to the video question response sheet, and in a minimum of 3 sentences, answer this question: what impact did imperialism have on the economies of Africa, Europe, and the Americas? If you need a quick refresher, remember you have a rewind button. You can go back and listen to us again. Thank you guys very much for watching, and have a good day.